guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at kind of a budget offering. This is the Byrd Harrier 2. Byrd, if you're not familiar, is sort of the budget line of Spyderco, made in China type of stuff, often following some of the mainstream Spyderco models, not perfectly all the time, but this sort of follows, we've had the Endela on the channel. I'll quickly grab that. So there's the Endela, and this is sort of the Byrd equivalent to that. So there's also, if you probably know this, but just in case you don't, there's also a Byrd equivalent to the Endura and the Delica, being the Harrier 2 and the Meadowlark. And so this kind of fits within that family of knives. So there'd be the Harrier, which would be bigger, this guy, the Harrier 2, and then the Meadowlark, which would be a little smaller. So size and weight is notable on this. That's going to be the primary difference between it and, say, some of those other knives you're familiar with. Overall, this is 7 11/16, so a bit under 8 inches there, 3 7/16 on the blade length, 4 3/8 on the handle. Okay, so that's the closed length. And one number that's worth noting here is the grip area, which is actually 3 3/4 inches. So that's from here to here. And 3 3/4 inches on a knife that's just a little more than 7.5 inches long is actually pretty impressive, considering, we've often had knives on the channel that are over 8 inches, but don't give us that much grip area. So I've got to give some credit for that particular point. And the last thing here, 3.4 ounces is a pretty lightweight knife, especially in G10. But here's what I would say about size and weight overall. This carries really well. And what I like about it is that despite the fact that this is not what I would really consider a large knife, it does have a handle that can accommodate even for fairly large hands, or for someone like me who always feels smaller knives. I think the primary thing that often puts me off of a smaller knife is I feel cramped on the handle, but I don't feel cramped at all with this. And I really appreciate that, given the fact that they're doing quite a lot with the limited space there, 7.5 inches that they have available. Moving on to the blade. All right, we have, as is typical of this lineup of knives, full flat ground 8CR13 MOV blade, sort of a typical Spyderco blade shape here, good edge geometry, which is again typical of Spyderco. The big thing of note here is going to be the 8CR13 MOV steel. So it's not going to perform like the VG10 of the Endura. It's not going to perform like S30V or anything else. 8CR13 MOV is not the worst steel out there, and likely, okay, for a good majority of the population, that steel is going to be just fine, right? Yes, there are some of us who, now there are some people, although a fairly limited number, who use their pocket knife like a ton at work. Maybe they, open 55 bags of cement every single day and they use their pocket knife for every single one or something like that. And in that case, yeah, you want a blade steel that's really going to hold up. For most of us, we're taking our knife out, we're making 1 or 2 cuts in a day. And at that pace, right, at that rate of use, 8CR13 is more than enough for the vast majority of us who use knives. Now, the fact is, most of us like better steel, because it's true that even with fairly limited use, this is going to, like, let's just say, you drop both of these knives in your pocket and at some point they're going to get dull and you're going to have to resharpen them. Well, this one is going to last longer, okay? And the same is true of a number of other steels. So this S35VN or this D2, they're going to perform a little bit longer. We'll bring these knives back in for a more detailed comparison when we get to that point in the video. But yeah, 8CR13 MOV is not going to last as long as some other steels. Most of us, though, we like those other steels because we're steel snobs, right? Because we like the idea that we have good steel, not because we really need it. All right. By the way, I know everyone's going to comment down below, that you really need the good steel, and that's great. I'm glad that you do. I'm glad you get a lot of use out of your knife. And I'm glad, especially, now, by the way, one other consideration here, me as a reviewer, I switch my knife out a lot, which means any one knife doesn't get as much use as someone who, if you just had one knife, if this was your only knife and you put it in your pocket every day, obviously it's going to get more use than for someone like me who's switching their knife multiple times per week. Sometimes halfway through the day, I put a new knife in my pocket if I feel so inclined. Let's put a point out here. The cutting edge is going to be 2 7/8, so just a hair under 3 inches of cutting edge. And that does start to play a little part here. And that's going to be one of my slight complaints about this. Not only do I kind of wish ATR 13 MOV would go away and just be replaced by, 14C28N or D2 or something else. Now, I guess I'm kind of getting my wish because Chinese D2 is everywhere these days. But you're also dealing with a little bit of lack in cutting edge. And I will say that's a notable difference. I guess not that noticeable, but there's about a quarter inch here in comparison to the Endela. And notice compared to the steel wheel here, like on a knife of similar size, you can get an awful lot more cutting edge. All right, so you're sacrificing that for the finger choil, which, by the way, I also really like. And so, yeah, I'm talking to both sides of my mouth here. I do like the choil. I also don't like the lack of cutting edge. My solution would be to buy a bigger knife, okay? um, but yeah, I know I'm not being totally consistent there. Look, I don't have any real problems with the blade here. Let's move on to lockup and deployment. This is a fairly stiff lockback. And by the way, I've had a few different Byrd knives. I've had two Cara 2s. I don't know how that happened, but sometimes it happens. I've had a couple of Cara 2s. I've handled a few different Byrd knives, and the lockbacks always seem quite functional and pretty positive. By the way, solid as a rock, which I do appreciate a lot. My experience has been that the locks on the Byrd series of knives tend to be a little stiffer. So you're going to have to put a little more effort, right, into getting that guy to close for you. And you're going to feel it a little more as you deploy the blade, right? You can feel that lock bar putting a little more pressure on the blade tang there. That stuff doesn't really bother me. In fact, if you're one of those people who likes to feel that solid, secure lockup, you may actually prefer, and this is something that I do actually prefer, you may prefer the budget line over the main Spydercos. One of the things that I always notice about, the Delicas and Enduras and stuff like that, yes, they're very easy to deploy, but it almost feels too easy. All right. And by the way, I'm well aware that there's not a direct equivalency between lock bar tension in this case and strength. It's more about the mechanical stuff that's going on here, but it just feels nicer, okay, to get that really positive, hefty snap going on. I will say this: it's deployed by this Byrd hole. I hate the Byrd-shaped hole. I really do. I just make it a hole. Like it seems like you're doing extra work here. You could just have a drill and pop a nice little hole through there, and we're gonna know that it's not a Spyderco because it says Byrd right on the side of it. Okay, so everyone already knows that the Byrd lineup is the budget equivalent, and so I really wish the Byrd-shaped hole would kind of go away. By the way, this is not going to be the knife that you're going to be, flicking open with a spider flick or something like that. The tension on that lock bar is definitely going to be much too high for that. But that doesn't mean you can't open it quickly. I'll kind of quickly demonstrate for you here. So look, I mean, that didn't take me that long, right? So lock and deployment, it's good. I have no real complaints. Handle is going to be G10 with stainless steel liners. Now, I will say this. I like the way that they've done the stainless steel. So if you can see in there, and if you can't, I'll kind of represent it for you on the back. So all they've done is they've run steel back here. The front portion of the handle scale is just the G10. So that's a nice thing to see. It certainly is going to reduce the weight just a little bit. And there's, by the way, Cold Steel does similar construction, and a few other knives are similarly built. And I do really, really like that, to see that they've kind of minimized the amount of steel in there to save us a little bit of weight. G10 is still pretty heavy, but this is not a big, heavy knife anyway, so it's not a big deal that's worth paying a lot of attention to. In terms of clip position, we've got 4 possibilities, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4-way repositionable clip. It is built with Torx construction, so if you want to take this apart for cleaning or something like that, you can easily do it. G10 handle is quite grippy and feels really good. I do like the G10 handle. And again, for a small knife with a small handle, this is quite comfortable. We've talked about this before, but a knife that's bigger and has a beefier, thicker handle is going to be a bit more comfortable. So this is not going to be, say, as comfortable as a Recon 1 or an 8010, which an 8010 is fantastic in hand. But, right, it's got this big, girthy, thick handle, which this doesn't have. And of course, because it doesn't have it, it carries so nicely. All right. So what do I think of the handle? Yeah, I think this is great. In fact, I could almost suggest that I like this. Not almost, I actually would suggest I like this a little better than the FRN options. By the way, let's point that out. There are FRN options available. So most Byrd knives, you can find them in FRN or G10. The G10 and the options are a little more common actually from the Byrd knives than the alternate. Now, the big thing to notice here when we talk about the handle and the comfort of it is this finger choil. And I like the finger choil. I really do. I just find it gives me a way to choke up and get a little more control. And it's not as critical on a knife of this size. This is not a huge knife. For me, the main drawing card for a finger choil is it allows me to carry a larger knife, okay, and use that larger knife for everything, right? A large knife with a finger choil can basically do all the small, detailed control stuff that excuse me, guys, that a small knife can do. So it gives you that extra option to use your big knife as if it were a small knife. This is not that big anyway, but I like that choil for the extra control and just the extra grip option it gives me. Okay, let's go ahead now and get to some comparisons. Let's begin with the Para 2, mostly because lots of you are familiar with that. So you can see that this is quite a bit smaller. And so if you've tried a Para 2 or you own one and you think, I wish I could have something a little smaller, this might be a good option for you. Of course, the steel is going to be something you may be concerned about. Another knife of similar size that I actually like a whole lot, even similar construction, right? G10 with stainless steel liners, is the new Steel Will Sheula. And this is really nice. I have to say, Steel Will has done a great job. Now, this is going to cost you a little bit more. It's also got bearings and D2 steel. So those things, right, this is on washers with HTR13. This is going to be more stainless. This is going to hold an edge better. The bearings are going to give you a knife that has nicer action, a little more fidget friendly. But, of course, bearings, ball bearings, may not be something you want if you're looking at a knife like this. You may be specifically after something with washers, and I definitely get that. We'll throw the Endela in here for a second. I am going to do a full comparison video between these two, so I won't say much other than to say, obviously the steel is different and the finger choil is different. The Endela is, even a little bit bigger, and most of that extra size is in the handle, which does make it perhaps a better option. If you have really big hands or handle comfort is an issue for you, you may lean toward the Endela. One other significant comparison here that I want to make, and that is to the Byrd Raven 2. A couple of reasons I want to bring this one in. One, a little more hand feeling, a little more ergonomic, not much, but just a hair more. A little nicer action. This is a knife you can spidey flick if you're into that kind of thing, and I know some of you are. Slightly thicker blade stock. All right, so if you do, if you're worried about the strength and durability, but also the steel is going to be better. So if you're going to get one Byrd knife, I would be leaning toward this one. You can see they're fairly similar in size, and so out of the two of them, I would lean toward the Raven, although it definitely is going to be more substantial and noticeable to carry. And I also know that some people don't like liner locks. You prefer the back locks, and that's fine by me. Okay, I think we've got all the comparisons out of the way. What are my overall thoughts on this? Well, listen, guys, this is a very decent little cutting tool. It's not super expensive. It offers a light, simple, useful tool in a size that's sort of in between two existing knives, the Harrier and the Meadowlark. And so if you, much like our discussion about the Endela, if you're like, hey, the Endura is too big, or if you're like the Harrier is too big, the Meadowlark is too small, I get that. The other thing, and here's where I think these Byrd knives really shine. To me, the Endura Delica and the Endura Endela Delica lineup, they're good knives for sure, but they're asking quite a bit of money for what you're getting, and I think this as a budget option, if what you really want is just a budget-friendly cutting tool, then I think this is probably the way to go. Now, if you have, again, if there's something going on in your life or in your use that requires a better steel, then that's the consideration that you're going to have to make. But I like these Byrd knives quite a bit, especially this little lineup with the Harrier and stuff. I think they're pretty good knives, and as a nice user that's still very capable and not going to break the bank, I think it's a good option. There you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this knife down below. We'll talk to you soon.